Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. Here you will learn all things related to healing from divorce, mind, body, and spirit, so you can create a beautiful new life filled with happiness. I'm Rachel Ruby, author of Divorce to Bliss, divorce coach, speaker, and attorney, and I'm so glad you found me here. Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. I'm Rachel S. Ruby, and today we are going to be talking about hormones and healing and what you need to know. So if you are a woman going through healing from divorce or going through a divorce and getting ready to start healing, please stay tuned because you are going to be privy to a lot of fabulous information. My guest today is Maritza Worthington, and Maritza is a functional hormone practitioner and women's nutritionist, and she specializes in helping women overcome exhaustion, hormonal imbalance, and optimize fertility naturally and in less time with a program she has called the Hormone Alchemy Academy. And I'll put links at the end so you can connect with Maritza. But first of all, welcome to the podcast, Maritza. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this is really a great topic, and I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about all of these questions, because I know for a fact that when I was going through my healing journey, at kind of the end of it, I was going through menopause. And now looking back, it's so obvious to me, but at the time I didn't realize that so many of these, this emotional overload I was experiencing, a lot of it was probably caused or made even bigger by what I was going through, by the hormonal imbalance within, correct?
100%. Yeah. So 60% of divorces actually are initiated by women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s during that menopause time. So, that's not to say that the divorce is necessarily caused by this hormone imbalance, but it is interesting when you pair it with whatever is happening in that relationship is probably also being exacerbated by these hormonal fluctuations. And so it's really, an interesting kind of fact to think about, because a lot of my clients come to me because they say, I want my hormones to be balanced, not just for myself, but because I want to show up better in my relationships. So I always get really intrigued by that.
Yeah. I mean, those are great points. Very valid. Yes. And a lot of the women I speak with are of gray divorce age. So they usually call a gray divorce 50 or older. And I think with the hormones, it just, again, it's great to be aware of it. And even though you may be aware, hey, I'm going through menopause or I'm in perimenopause, if you are in that healing journey and going through the divorce and getting ready to do that, a lot of times you don't connect the dots like, hey, maybe there's something I can do to help myself so I can heal better. So let's just jump into this. I think, first of all, what would be really helpful is if you can give us an overview of how hormones affect healing from trauma, like divorce, and conversely, how trauma affects our hormones.
So it's interesting because I like to kind of take in everything, right? When we're talking about healing, it's like there's the physical component, there's the emotional component, there's the spiritual component. And going through a process of grief or a cycle that is just extremely stressful for more than 6 months really taxes the body. Mm-hmm. And so even though our bodies can adapt to minor stressors, it's really not as equipped to handle the baggage that comes with stress for a prolonged period of time. And so when I think about someone going through divorce, having, myself also gone through that journey, it is a process of burnout. You do reach that level of burnout because what happens is, the grief, the stress, that triggers a reaction with your adrenal glands. Your adrenals then start pumping more cortisol. And so actually studies have found that in a process of grief, cortisol is actually high, really, really high, higher than it should be for a very long period of time, which then can trigger things like autoimmune conditions, hormone imbalances. The nervous system kind of clams up. And when that happens, then you're not getting enough blood flow to your organs. and that can slow down digestion. Immune system also goes down. And so this is why, you might see that maybe you're getting more sick around this time of going through the grief, which can exacerbate the healing. And so I really think that true healing is looking at the emotional and the physical and the spiritual. And divorce can open that up as a possibility, right? It can open us up to really connect deeper to ourselves.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you so much for that. What do trauma and stress in the body actually look like?
Okay, so when I think about trauma and stress, what that looks like, so I think it's something that is felt. And a lot of us kind of think about stress as just existing in our brains, but really it's an entire physical response. And when you're going through that burnout period, your body will start to let you know. It'll tell you, hey, I've reached my limit here. And that can look like, getting sick more often because the immune system goes lower as cortisol goes higher. That can look like more inflammation in the body. That can look like digestion slowing down because when you're in that state of fight or flight, the blood rushes to the limbs away from the organs and everything just kind of slows down, even detoxification. Hormone imbalances might really come to the surface during this period as well, because you do detox your hormones. And it's like if that liver isn't working as properly, you might start to notice things like hair loss, right? That's a really big one. Hair loss, skin issues, dryness of the skin. It can look really so different for everybody, but it's like, but those tend to be the ones that I hear the most. And also just feeling so taxed. Like if you find yourself just like, wow, it's afternoon and I am crashing hard, then that is a sign that you're in burnout. Waking up in the middle of the night, especially the 3 a.m. time, that is a sign of burnout. So these are kind of like the sneaky things that happen, right? That really let us know, okay, I need to slow down and really start to nurture my body because stress is now starting to literally break me down.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, there's so many more symptoms, but you got most of the big ones. I think also for me, a big one was the focus, and not even just the mental, the clarity, but just where, I've always been able to speak in front of large groups of people with no problem, but I'd be speaking and then I'd forget a word and I forget, I was going to say something and what was I going to say, and I started talking to all these other women. They were having the same thing. And I said, thank goodness it's not, I don't have so early onset Alzheimer's or something, because it's scary to be when you're so used to being able to do that. And then all of a sudden you feel like you can't form a thought sometimes. So, luckily I've passed that phase, but that was hard. And also, like you said, the waking up in the middle of the night. Yes. And waking up and sweating. So lots of fun stuff. But
and I will say, just to kind of back up to what you were saying, the memory, that is very true for women going through menopause. Like that tends to be a huge one. That can be due to progesterone going a lot lower. So progesterone, it actually helps us with brain function. So when you start to lose that hormone, produce less of it, then, things like memory issues, lack of focus, that can definitely come to the surface. So definitely what you're saying makes sense. And it reminds me of that, menopause season that I see so much in my menopausal clients.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think even for women listening to this podcast, sometimes, like I said, we don't really think about, like, for example, if we're going through menopause or we're in perimenopause and our doctor said, you're in perimenopause or you're going through it, or, my last visit, my doctor's like, you're done. You're postmenopausal. Like you have no estrogen left, basically. But a lot of times we realize that we are, but we don't realize, because like you said, everyone's different and we might have symptoms and it might scare us, like that the mental clarity thing kind of worried me for a while until I started talking to other people and realizing, oh, phew, this is normal. But, we think about it, what's happening to our bodies. But again, oftentimes we don't connect that with the healing, the normal healing symptoms, which can be grief and sadness and negativity and, all kinds of things. And we're trying to turn that around and create this new life and become positive. And we're having all this stuff going on in the body, like hormonally. And sometimes we don't realize that there's such a deep connection. And so I can't wait to get to where we talk about what we can do. But let's get into, obviously hormone levels are different as women age at different ages, right? So can you talk about the hormonal response to stress and trauma at different phases of life? So let's say a young woman in her 20s or 30s going through something like divorce versus, and we kind of already talked about this, but I'd like to kind of compare them side by side, versus a perimenopausal or menopausal woman, and what those differences might look like in the different age groups.
Yeah, great question, because I feel like, there's so many hormonal fluctuations that take place throughout the entire span of a woman's life. And then there's these peak moments, right? So like preparing for pregnancy, then being pregnant, then coming off the pregnancy postpartum, and then, years down the road, menopause. So, these are really peak events. And I will say that the medical system doesn't always cater or do a good job of listening to that hormonal experience and really helping women in a 360-degree way, right? It's kind of just a very sort of quick visit. You're in, you're out. And so I will say that a lot of women feel like they're gaslighted or not really taken care of in that sort of setting. So that's really like, I think that that's just so important. And it's missed. It doesn't have to be. There's a lot of practitioners like myself who are really there to fill in the gaps. Because there are a lot of gaps and a lot of things that aren't being tested for. And, first of all, I think we have to give ourselves so much grace instead of making ourselves feel bad for these hormone fluctuations that happen, because, part of it is a natural experience. It is natural to eventually hit that menopause. That is a very natural thing, right? We don't have to fear it as much as we do. Fertility, there's also a lot of fear behind the fertility, because as a young woman, to answer your question, if she's had most of her life fearing her fertility, taking things like birth control, getting into that state, that mindset of like, okay, now I need to switch gears because maybe I am open to having a child. That could be a lot to take in, right? And going through the trying to conceive journey, that is a huge shift, especially for the average woman who has been on birth control for at least 10 years, where you've shut off your hormones. And it's almost like a mini menopause that these women are going through when they take the pill, because all their hormone levels go low. And so that's why, some of the same symptoms will pop up. And then all of a sudden, they need to switch gears. And that can be a difficult thing to really wrap your head around. And there can be obstacles in that trying to conceive journey. So, I offer a lot of support with that sort of transition. And really what I like to do is help women get back in sync with their cycles, their natural cycle. Let those normal sort of natural hormones kick in, because you feel better, you have more energy, you're more resilient to stress. There's a lot of benefits that come from coming off of the pill. So that's kind of where I really fill in for my younger clients. But it's interesting because even the hormonal birth control pill comes up for my menopausal clients. Sometimes the doctors want to push that as well. And the thing is, there is no one size fits all solution. Right. And so I think that's the benefit of really working with a practitioner who, sees where you're at in the hormone journey and can give you tools so that you don't need to rely on things like hormonal birth control, or, these hormone replacement therapies. Sometimes that doesn't resonate with, a lot of my clients, it doesn't resonate. They want a different kind of solution. But yeah, so it is interesting to see like the different needs that women have throughout their life.
Right. And again, I mean, you nailed it. Everybody is different. And I think it's interesting to me as, time moves forward that we're starting to see a lot more naturopaths. We're starting to see a lot more coaches and, people who specialize in this kind of thing like yourself, because I know, when my mom was going through all this, or people in, the next generation, above me, and still even today, there are so many doctors where the woman goes in, she says, "Oh, I'm having all these symptoms of, these menopausal symptoms, and it's just making my life, it's wreaking havoc in my life." And a lot of times the response is, "Oh, well, you can go on hormones, right? And you can take hormones." And so I personally, and this is not to say everyone should do this, because again, everyone has to make their own choice. Every body is different, but I don't like to put anything in my body unless it is 100% necessary, like to save my life or do something right. So I knew I'm very much a naturalist, and I knew I didn't take like Tylenol. So I knew that I wanted to experience this because I had to get through it. And I felt personally for myself that if I masked it by taking those hormones, that I don't know. I mean, I'd still have to experience it at some point when I came off the hormones, right? So, but I have a lot of friends who couldn't stand it. They couldn't handle it. And they went on the hormones. They're like, "Oh, took such the edge off." And they'd go on it and then come off it for a bit and then go back on it in short periods of time. And that really helped them. And that was their choice. So I think, again, getting the most information that you can wherever you are in your journey, in your hormonal journey, about options is incredibly helpful. So if you go to your doctor and your doctor says, "Oh, you should go on hormones," then I would seek some guidance, like going to someone like you and seeing if there are ways to help yourself feel better without taking those. But you still might decide to, which is fine. Again, I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying, it depends on, what somebody wants and what their body needs, right?
Yeah. So every woman is different. And I'm actually not opposed to bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. So those are hormones that mimic your own natural production. And it's like you get more of these plant properties instead of like a synthetic type of, hormone replacement therapy. So there is that option for some women who need to go that route. But I will say, for the most part, any woman going through menopause, we can make that journey a lot more graceful if we do the work to address the adrenal glands.
Okay.
So the adrenal glands are huge.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. Yeah. Let's talk about that in a minute. I love what you just brought up about the natural ways to kind of mimic the hormones, because I just recently, I'd say within the last 6 months, and I'm like supposedly postmenopausal, but I'm still having some, symptoms or whatever you want to call it. And I found a natural product that has really made a difference. And I wish I had known about that a year ago or a year and a half ago, right? Or even 2 years ago, I guess. I feel like it would have made a big difference. So I didn't realize that there were products out there like that. And I think that is just in and of itself a great piece of information for a lot of women who, like me, may not have realized that there was something like that. They might try and see if it helped. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And sometimes we don't always know because those solutions aren't like so in your face, right? It's not,
right.
We go to the doctor and they're just going to give us a little bit more of like a quick answer and like, some sort of pharmaceutical, but yeah, there's definitely different paths out there. And I'm glad to hear that you, that you took that as well and that you see the difference.
So yes, there are options. I think it's important, like with anything, anytime you're making a major decision, and especially when it's about your body, that you get educated and you know the options, and then you can make an informed decision, right?
Exactly. I always say that. Be informed, know all your options, and then you can decide what works for you from there. So
yeah. So, okay, now we're going to get into the stuff that probably a lot of women want to hear. Again, wish that I had known this a few years ago, but let's talk about whether there are solutions to help tame the hormonal and overall adrenal systemic response to divorce so that we can focus on the healing work and not put the body under so much stress. So take it away.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, divorce is already so stressful. So it's like anything that we can do to sort of, lift the weight off of what we're going through is going to be helpful. It's like, hey, you're going through a major life change. So I think that's the time to really, really focus within, fill your own cup. Explore what that means to even feel you're sort of taken on that mindset, right? Of putting yourself first. I think one thing to know when you are going through any sort of cycle of grief, a high stress period is, anything that you can do to bring balance to the adrenal glands is going to help you feel so much better. Because right now, the adrenal glands during that period are going to be extremely taxed. And when the adrenal glands are taxed, that means that you're going to have a lot more of those physical symptoms that come to the surface, right? So anything that you can do to really lower the stress is going to be huge. And I like to think about stress like a bucket, right? So if we think about a bucket, it's like, what causes more stress? Toxins, chemicals, and these are all things that tax the adrenal glands too. Coffee. Overdoing the coffee. What are other ones? Inflammatory foods, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we might want more of those comfort foods, but those foods can work against us, right? Really starting to switch some of these habits can just kind of lighten the load on the adrenal glands, increasing your adaptogens. So these are herbs that actually help you adapt to stress and become more resilient. So, maybe you want to take a new tea, ashwagandha, that's a really good herb. So there's a lot of really great herbs that literally help you adapt to stress. These are things that you can do. And I think it's just also important to know that the more you can do for your adrenal glands, also balancing your minerals is probably my favorite one. Because if you start to replenish your minerals, then your adrenal glands will start to basically normalize, become more resilient to stress, and your body isn't going to feel as depleted. So I'm really, really big on women going through any sort of period of high stress, exhaustion, hormone imbalance. Make sure you get a mineral panel done, because you'll be able to see how that stress has actually literally depleted your minerals. And some of the ones that I see are things like calcium, magnesium. These tend to be out of range during a period of high stress. Even iron, magnesium, calcium, I said, and then sodium, potassium. A lot of these can be out of range, and that can cause you to feel even more depleted. So if you start to replenish your nutrients, that's going to make you more adaptable to the stress that you're going through. So, that's something that I like to dig a lot deeper with my clients.
Nice. Yeah. So basically, again, it's really, I think, would you say, obviously, if you're having these things, you have clients do a blood panel first, so you can look at everything, correct? And then see what they're lacking in?
So blood panel actually doesn't reveal as much as other types of testing. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I feel like the blood panel is just kind of a quick snapshot. The testing that you get, the hormone panels that you get through your doctor are also kind of a quick snapshot of whatever your hormones happen to be in that moment.
Okay.
But what I do is I like to dig deeper, because I'm looking at minerals, your mineral status through a hair tissue sample. So that's for the mineral thing. Because, a lot of that will come out in the hair because your hair grows through your cells. So I'm able to see what you're deficient in that way. And also when I do hormone testing, functional hormone testing actually looks at an entire 24 hours versus just going in and being like, what are my hormones say right now?
Yeah.
So that way you're actually getting a more detailed view of how your cortisol fluctuates during the day and what your sex hormones are doing as well. So I will say that like functional hormone testing goes a lot deeper.
Oh, wow. That's such great advice because, I used to see a nutritionist and she would have me go in and do these panels and then she'd say, okay, this is low and this is that. And I love that you can dive deeper and look at a bigger picture, not just the snapshot, like you said. So you can really help people. So that's fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off? And I'll give everyone your contact information. And is there anything else you have to share with us regarding hormones and stress, trauma, etc.?
I think just the last thing I wanted to say is, if you're going through that burnout period, just give yourself so much grace. Like, know that it's something that you can overcome. And with the right tools, you can teach your body how to be more adaptable to that stress so that it doesn't take everything out of you. And so, know that that's an option, that's available to you. And hopefully you feel inspired after today.
Yeah. That's such a relief. I mean, I think for so many women to hear those words that you just said, know that it's okay to feel how you're feeling and that there is help, right? And I think that is, that's huge. And again, I wish I had more of that years ago when I needed that. And so this has been so informative and I thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you, why don't you tell us your website and then I'll put it on the screen and I'll put it in the show notes for those who are listening on the audio podcast and also where people can reach you on social media.
Absolutely. So my website is hormonealchemist.com. And then you can find me on Instagram. That's my favorite platform at the moment. And the name is Hormone Alchemist. And those are basically the best places to reach me. And if you're ever interested in digging deeper or seeing if I can help you and your hormone situation, there's an option for a clarity call, and that's on the website. So you can just book directly from the site.
Fantastic. And I hope that those of you listening, those women out there who are going through this healing process or about to start and are having this hormone, you're in this, either whether it's menopause or some other issues with your hormones if you're younger, and that you realize from just listening today that there is help available for you and you don't have to just suffer in silence, and that you do have options, hopefully. So definitely explore those. Give Maritza a call, check out her website, and let us know. Please let us know what you discover and how you're feeling after you have made any kinds of changes, and let us know how it is affecting your healing journey, especially, because we would both love to hear that. Thank you so much for being here today, Maritza. I really appreciate it. I think it was very informative, and you empower women by giving them this information and helping them realize that they do have a choice usually, and they don't have to, like I said, just suffer. So I appreciate you.
Take your power back. Thank you.
That's right.
Thanks for having me so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.